I was rear-ended by the car behind. There was so much blood on my head that I could barely see people clearly. After arriving at the hospital, the doctor asked me if I wanted to call my family members. I smiled and said, "No need. The man who accompanied the pregnant woman into the ambulance just now, and the child beside him, are my husband and son." When I was taken to the hospital, my head was still groggy, and the tinnitus didn't subside. A nurse asked me 3 times before I could barely hear what she was asking. She asked, "You're seriously injured. Do you want me to contact your family members?" There were still some unsolidified bloodstains on my forehead. I grinned and shook my head at her with a smile. "No need." Before she could continue to persuade me, I raised my arm and pointed in a certain direction. There were the people who had just gotten out of the car that rear-ended me. The pregnant woman was lying on the stretcher, crying, screaming and moaning. Standing beside her were 2 anxious figures. One big and one small. The 2 people looked as if they were carved out of the same mold. They stood there, softly comforting the pregnant woman. They were clearly a happy family of 3. If we ignored the fact that we were in the hospital. I pointed at them and said softly to the nurse who had shown concern for me just now, "The 2 people accompanying the pregnant woman over there. One is my husband, and the other is my son." Meeting her astonished gaze, I continued to smile. "So, really, there's no need." Before I could finish speaking, I fainted again due to a lack of strength. My vision gradually blurred. The last scene I saw was Blake bending down, with his lips only a hair's breadth away from the pregnant woman's forehead. Then I closed my eyes. The patient is suspected to have an unidentified bleeding point. A CT scan must be done immediately, and preparations for the operation should be made. After being given anesthesia, I seemed to sleep very deeply. So deeply that I didn't even have a dream. When the effect of the anesthesia wore off, the pain instantly invaded every part of my body. I wanted to curl up to relieve the pain. As soon as I moved my arm, it was held down by a pair of hands. "Don't move around. You're on an IV drip. Be careful of blood backflow." The voice sounded somewhat familiar. I raised my eyes and looked over. It was the little nurse who had asked me if I wanted to call my family members before I passed out. Meeting my confused gaze, she curved the corners of her lips. "You're all alone and you just had an operation. There has to be someone to watch over your IV drip for you. Otherwise, if an accident occurs, our hospital will have to take responsibility." She thoughtfully dipped a cotton swab in some water and applied it to my lips. My throat finally didn't feel like it was on fire anymore. I took a breath and asked, "How many days have I been asleep?" "Almost a little over a day. It's not a major problem. It's just that there was bleeding due to stomach compression. The doctor said the operation was a success. As long as you rest well, you'll definitely recover soon." I nodded and thanked her. Seeing that she seemed to want to say something but hesitated, I smiled and said, "You can just say what's on your mind." Her eyes fluttered. She was curious and also seemed extremely angry. "Don't you want to ask about your husband and child?" I didn't answer and instead asked her another question. "Has my phone rung?" She was taken aback for a moment and then shook her head. I was silent for a few seconds and then said inferently, "Then there's nothing to ask. I guess he still doesn't know that the person in the front car was me. He's completely focused on that person." The little nurse fell silent. Because what I said was the truth. She waved her hand. "Let's not talk about that. Your top priority now is to sleep well and get your body in good shape." I felt a warmth in my heart and sincerely thanked her. This time when I fell asleep, I had a dream. I dreamed of the time when I was wearing a school uniform. The young man smiled brightly and reached out his hand to me. "Don't be afraid, Serena. I'm here. It'll definitely be okay." Just as I was about to take the young man's hand, I was woken up by the ringtone. The young man disappeared, and what faced me was still the white ceiling of the hospital. I glanced at the caller ID and answered the phone. Blake's voice came from the other end. "My son and I are coming home today. My son said he wants to drink the chicken soup you make. Hurry up and make it before we get home." I couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Are you sure it's him who wants to drink it?" Cody seemed to have taken the phone and said confidently, "It's me who wants to drink it. Hurry up and make it for me." I was silent for a few seconds and then said softly. First of all, Cody, I'm your mother. Not your nanny. Secondly, I'm sick and I'm in the hospital now. Who are you trying to deceive? You were perfectly fine just a few days ago before Dad and I went out to play. After a pause, he suddenly realized and said, I know. Are you saying this because you know Amanda is sickened in the hospital? You're already an adult. Can't you stop being so unreasonable? Before I could speak, he continued. Anyway, I want to drink chicken soup today. And you have to make it for me. After saying that, he hung up the phone. I put down my phone and started to reflect. I had clearly educated him well. But his arrogant appearance was exactly like Blake's. I was in a daze for a while. Then I heard Starry, the little nurse who had been accompanying me for the past 2 days, gently knock on the door twice and say, Sister, there are some policemen who want to talk to you about the relevant matters of the car accident. Are you in a condition to talk? I nodded and, with her help, managed to sit up. The policeman asked about the process of the accident and also asked me what kind of compensation I wanted. I smiled slightly and said to them, I won't accept any compensation. And I will never reach a settlement. Not long after, I heard a childish voice outside. Dad, that person must want a lot of money. Otherwise, why wouldn't she agree to a settlement? You can talk to her later. No matter how much money she wants, we can just give it to her. Blake was stunned for a few seconds and gave a short response. Cody was still muttering. We can't let Amanda go to jail. She didn't do it on purpose. Moreover, I want her to be my new mother in the future. The last few words were spoken in a lower and lower voice, as if something had choked his throat. I smiled at him. Go on. Why don't you continue? He hid behind Blake. Blake's expression was stunned, but his eyebrows involuntarily furrowed. Serena, you scared Cody. The wound was still hurting. I took several deep breaths before I could recover. Blake took my silence as a sign of giving in, and his expression softened a bit. He asked, Why are you here? I sneered. You shouldn't be asking me that. You should ask Amanda. You were just discussing how much money to give me to make me accept a settlement at the door. Have you lost your memory now? Before he could speak, I stared into his eyes and continued word by word. You're dreaming if you want to use your marital property to compensate me for your first love. Blake and I parted on bad terms. To be exact, it was them who were unhappy. I was okay. After I said that, the atmosphere froze for a few seconds. But soon, let out a well sigh. Blake spread his hands helplessly and said, Serena, why do you have to be like this? Amanda just got divorced and came back. She's still pregnant. Why do you have to argue with a pregnant woman? I smiled and asked back, why can't I argue? I'm not the one who got her pregnant. And I'm not the one who let a pregnant woman drive. Tell me, why exactly can't I argue? Cody shouted in dissatisfaction. You're just jealous that Dad and I are nice to Amanda. You're such a mean-hearted woman. How could I have a mother like you? He took the opportunity to shift all the blame onto me. Look. Even the child thinks you're wrong. Can't you set a good example of being tolerant and magnanimous for the child? Since Amanda came back, similar scenes have occurred countless times. One plays the tough guy, and the other plays the nice guy. They all force me to admit my mistake. I looked at them coldly. Then what do you think I should do to set a good example for him? Blake thought my attitude was yielding, and he immediately put on a smile and expressed his thoughts. I was in the car too. She really just stepped on the wrong pedal because she was too nervous. Moreover, Amanda is sort of my half-sister now. I think we can just count it as a family dispute. You can issue a letter of understanding, and this matter can be considered over. I gently placed my finger on the wound. When the flesh grows new skin, it will faintly itch. But it takes time. But the pain reminds me that I still need a lot of time for the wound to heal. But when I decided to cut Blake out of my life, it was just a matter of a moment. And it didn't even hurt much. I sighed and finally said the words that had been lingering in my heart for a long time. Let's get a divorce. Blake. After the divorce, you can use the property in your hands to compensate me however you like. My words seemed to hit Blake's bride. His face turned livid. and he left with a sentence. "You're dreaming." Since that day, neither he nor Cody has come again. The little nurse Starry, on the other hand, came to accompany me whenever she was free. She was indignant. How can they be so shameless? Sister, aren't you angry? During this period, I gradually got to know Starry and knew what kind of temper she had. She was straightforward and hated evil like the devil. I shook my head. I don't care about them anymore. What's there to be angry about? She rolled her eyes and said, "Sister, can I help you get revenge?" She smiled cunningly, which piqued my curiosity. "What do you want to do?" She shook her head and refused to say. "As long as you're not heartbroken and are willing to let me do it. You'll know what I want to do in a couple of days." Indeed, within 2 days, Blake came to me in a fit of rage. "Did you tell others that Amanda is the mistress? Do you know that Amanda cried her heart out and wanted to commit suicide?" At that time, Starry was changing my dressing. After hearing his words, she sneered. "This patient's family member. Please pay attention to your attitude towards the patient. Moreover, the hospital is a gossip concentration camp. If you don't want others to know something, you better not do it. What kind of ability is it to yell at a woman?" Blake was so angry that his face turned red. "I'm talking to my wife. Who do you think you are? Do you believe that I'll file a complaint against you?" Starry shrugged inferiorly and continued to retort. "Go ahead and file a complaint. My name is Starry, and the complaint box is on the left side of the staircase at the outpatient department on the 2nd floor. You can file a complaint if you want. As long as you do, I won't mind publicizing your glorious deeds even more. No one cared about your wife after she had an operation. But you're all worked up for a mistress trying to commit suicide in the hospital. She really came up with that. Does she think that if she accidentally gets hurt somewhere, she can get medical treatment in time? The hospital is a place to save lives and heal the wounded, not a place for you to fool around and act out a romance drama and waste public resources. If you really want to die, check out of the hospital and go outside to die." He was so angry, and he panted heavily. I will definitely file a complaint against you." I withdrew my approving gaze from Starry and said coldly to Blake, Blake, I'm warning you. Keep other people out of our business." I asked Starry to go out first. With only the 2 of us left in the ward, it suddenly became quiet. His strength waned, and there was a hint of exhaustion between his brows. "Serena, I've already told you that there's really no chance for me and Amanda. I only took extra care of her out of sympathy. As for Cody, I've also talked to him. He's still young. You've been too strict with him usually, so it's inevitable that he holds a grudge and speaks without thinking. Don't be too hard on him. After Amanda gives birth, I'll have done everything I can for her. Isn't it better for our family of 3 to live a good life?" I stared at him for a long while. It was not until his expression became uncomfortable that I spoke softly. "Blake, cutting so still blind sigh. I've been in the hospital for almost a week, and you've come here twice. But both times were because of Amanda. You talk about her all the time. Have you ever asked me how badly I'm hurt? If it hurts? Or where I'm injured? Even just once? Have you asked?" His expression froze on his face. After a long while, he said weakly, I was. He stammered for a while but couldn't come up with a proper explanation. So I kindly completed the sentence for him. "You're so concerned about her that you're confused. But the person you care about isn't me. It's Amanda." I sighed. "Since you can't let her go, why don't you just divorce me cleanly?" He suddenly looked up and shook his head vigorously. No, I won't divorce you. Serena, I love you. You know that, right? I love you. Maybe you really loved me once." I slowly yawned. The stinging tears welled up in my eyes. And my voice was tired. "But now, Blake, sorry. I can't feel your love for me anymore." He looked at me with red eyes and suddenly laughed. "Serena, sometimes I really wonder if you have a heart at all. Have you ever really loved me? Why don't you make a scene with me? Why can you propose a divorce so straightforwardly?" I looked back at him calmly. "Blake, don't go crazy." Blake fled the ward in a sorry state. As soon as he left, Starry came in to find me. She was full of curiosity. Sister. I saw that the scumbag's face didn't look good just now. What did you say to him? I shook my head. I didn't say much. He's just in a bad state of mind. Seeing that I wasn't in high spirits, she simply changed the topic and tried her best to make me happy. When she saw that I finally had a smile on my face, she nodded in satisfaction. That's more like it. Smile more. And you'll recover from your illness faster. I was slightly taken aback. Suddenly, I remembered that someone else had said these words to me before. He said, Serena, you should smile more. I lowered my eyes. And the corners of my lips were still upturned. Yeah. I should smile more. I waited for a long time. But I didn't wait for the police to come and question me again. So I had to call them to ask about the progress. Unexpectedly, they said to me in confusion, Serena, didn't you ask your husband to sign the settlement agreement on your behalf? My knuckles turned white as I gripped the phone. And my heart felt as cold as ice. Serena? I pursed my dry lips and said softly, my husband and I are in the process of negotiating a divorce. He can't make any decisions for me, let alone forgive the mistress who caused me to have an accident on my behalf. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. And then they quickly apologized. Sorry. We didn't know the situation was like this. There was a flaw in our investigation. Don't worry. We will reinvestigate this traffic accident and will contact you directly in the future. I hummed in response and hung up the phone. Starry was sitting beside me and heard the whole conversation on the phone. She pursed her lips. And her eyes seemed to be spitting fire. Speaking of which, sister, where on earth did you meet such a troublesome and strange person? My memory drifted back to a long time ago. After thinking carefully for a long while, I replied, it was also in the hospital. When I met him, it was in the hospital too. He wasn't like this back then. At that time, he was a nice person. At that time, I spent my spare time volunteering in the children's inpatient department. When I was playing with the children in the hospital garden, I met Blake, who had just finished a surgery and was sitting in a wheelchair, sunbathing alone. He looked haggard, and his whole face was pale with a sickly hue. I walked through the crowd with a bright smile on my lips and went over to talk to him. Hello. Do you mind if I sit beside you and enjoy the sun? He was stunned for a few seconds and then nodded. On sunny days, he would come out to bask in the sun every day. I didn't say much either and just quietly accompanied him by his side. Until one day, he took the initiative to speak. What's your name? That's when we finally started to have some interaction. Later, I asked him what illness he had. He pursed his lips and gave a bitter smile. Heart disease. I didn't hold the coffee I had just bought steady and spilled it on the ground, splashing brown stains on my white sneakers. Tears welled up in my eyes unexpectedly. He tried to comfort me in a flurry. Don't cry. I just had a heart transplant surgery. And I'm fine now. Don't cry. I cried for a long time that day. And he comforted me for a long time too. After that day, I still volunteered in the children's department and played with the children in the garden every day. But this time, there was an additional Blake in a wheelchair. Under my careful care, he recovered well. Thanks to his good physical foundation, he was discharged from the hospital a few days earlier than the doctor had expected. On the day Blake was discharged from the hospital, in the garden, he held a large bouquet of roses, knelt down on one knee, and asked me, Serena, would you like to be my girlfriend? Amid the cheers of the children, I nodded and agreed. Everything that happened later was natural. He almost spent all his savings on the heart transplant surgery. His previous job had also been terminated because of his long-term leave. So I took out my savings to help him start a small business. He was very smart and soon turned the small business into a listed company, and even had his own office building. In the first year after the company was established, he proposed to me. His hands were shaking, and the carefully prepared confession he had made was all jumbled up. Finally, heading to Selblay, he asked me, Serena, will you marry me? I gave the same answer, nodded, and threw myself into his arms. He was really nice back then. I recalled, feeling a bit regretful. Who would have thought that in just a few short years, he and I would end up like this? Starry looked at me with a complicated expression and asked tentatively, "Sister, do you still have feelings for him now?" I shook my head. I don't love either Blake or Cody anymore. Bang. The door of the ward was suddenly pushed open, startling Starry and me. I saw Cody with red eyes, looking at me in disbelief. "Mom," men fulfilled where I'd sigh. "Don't you love me anymore?" I looked at his face, which was almost identical to Blake's, and nodded slightly, "Yes. So don't worry. Even if I divorce Blake, I won't fight for your custody. You can still let your Amanda be your new mom." His voice trembled, and he stared at me stubbornly. "How can you not love me? I'm your son," I said coldly. "Aren't you being very filial to Amanda? Weren't you asking Amanda to be your new mom? So, why do you suddenly say you're my son now?" Before he could say anything, a soft and weak voice came from behind him. "Sister, don't blame him. The child is still young and doesn't know how to speak properly. I'll apologize to you on his behalf." Amanda was sitting in a wheelchair, slowly rolling in with a pregnant belly. I didn't respond, not even giving them a glance. Cody suddenly erupted and shouted at Amanda, "She's my mom. I don't need you to apologize for me." This was the first time in a long while that Cody stood on my side and got angry with Amanda because of me. Tears welled up in Amanda's eyes quickly. I still ignored them and continued chatting and laughing with Starry beside me. Amanda bit her lower lip and looked at me pleadingly. "Serena, I don't know what I did to upset you, but Blake and I are really innocent. If I've done something that made you unhappy, can I apologize to you now? I just beg you not to be angry with Blake and not to spread rumors about me anymore, so that others won't misunderstand me." She spoke earnestly and loudly. She even stood up from the wheelchair, knelt on the ground, and looked at me while crying. Her appearance as a weak person attracted a lot of onlookers who didn't know the truth. They pointed at me and talked. What could be such a big deal that it makes a pregnant woman go to such lengths? What kind of ability is it to bully a pregnant woman? You're really heartless. After all, Cody was still a child and had never seen such a scene. He was clearly at a loss. I looked at Amanda's slightly curved lips and smiled too. "Do you think I'll swallow my anger because I'm worried about Blake's status and don't want to make a big fuss?" I looked straight into her eyes. "But I don't even want Blake anymore. Why do you think I'll choose to swallow these grievances?" When Blake arrived, these were the words he heard me say, with a shake of his hand. The chicken soup he had bought spilled all over the floor. Amanda heard the sound and looked back. Her tears flowed even more profusely. She struggled to stand up from the ground, then went over and tugged at Blake's sleeve, saying, "Blake, don't blame sister-in-law. And don't blame Cody either. It was my own idea to come here and apologize to sister-in-law." Blake closed his eyes and said coldly, "You go back first." Amanda looked at him in disbelief. "Blake? I told you to get out. Can't you understand me?" He shook off his sleeve. Amanda wasn't on guard and almost fell to the ground again. It was a kind passerby who came over and gave her a hand. Blake ignored her. His scarlet eyes were fixed firmly on me. Starry spoke up to disperse the onlookers for me. "Everyone, go away. It's their family matter that the mistress came to the door. It has nothing to do with you. Hurry up and take care of your own patients." With just a few words, she helped me out of the awkward situation, and the discussions turned back to Amanda. Her face pale, she looked at Blake hesitantly. Seeing that he had no intention of paying attention to her, she had to push the wheelchair and leave on her own. He then asked Cody to go out, saying that he had something to talk to me about privately. Cody looked at me tearfully, wiped his tears, and left with his head down. There were finally just the two of us left in the ward again. After a long time, I heard Blake speak in a hoarse voice. "I received a call from the police. Now that you know I signed the settlement agreement, don't you have anything to say?" I found it a bit ridiculous. What kind of words do you want to hear from me? Do you want to hear me have a hysterical quarrel with you? Or do you want to see me turn into a crazy woman because of Amanda? Isn't that what you should do? He said. "I've done so many wrong things. Shouldn't you make a scene with me? Serena, why don't you love me? Is it because you still have that bastard named Finn in your heart?" When the old acquaintance was mentioned, all those memories that I had once tried so hard to forget came flooding into my mind all at once. My eyes turned cold. And my voice was also devoid of warmth. Blake, a thing so filled my inside. The heart beating in your chest is Finn's. How dare you scold him? What right do you have? Finn. This name ran through my entire barren youth and saved me from the brink of suicide countless times. At that time, my mother who had been abducted escaped, leaving behind a father who was an alcoholic. The scars on my body, big and small, never stopped. At school, I was bullied so much that even the teacher called me a bastard. When I first tried to drown myself in the river, he stopped me. He protected me and we fell to the ground. Then he scolded me. After seeing my tear-stained face, he clumsily helped me get a tissue to wipe my tears and apologized repeatedly. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to speak so harshly. Don't cry. How about I treat you to some candy? The next time I saw him, he came in following the head teacher and wrote his name on the blackboard. Hello, everyone. I'm the new student who transferred here. My name is Finn. He took the initiative to be my desk mate and then got into a fight with the people who had bullied me. From then on, no one in school dared to say anything about me in front of me anymore. With a face full of wounds, he smiled and said to me, "Don't be afraid. Serena. I'm here. I'll help you. You look so nice when you smile. You should smile more often." But not long after, the things Finn did to help me were exaggerated and reported to my father. I was held down and severely beaten. Later, he took off his pants and smiled at me with his yellow teeth. Your slutty mother has already run away. Anyway, having fulfilled my obsession. You're a bastard too. Since you want a man so much, then you can make me happy instead of your mother. In my despair, Finn's face flashed through my mind. At the last moment, I fought back desperately, picked up something nearby, and hit my father on the head. Then I ran away without looking back. I was all dizzy. I felt that I was really dirty and just wanted to find a place to wash myself quickly. When I came to my senses, Finn was holding my arm and pulling me from the middle of the river to the shore. He was furious. Serena. Are you crazy? What are you doing? My voice choked. Finn, hading fulfilled Riad sigh. I feel so dirty. I can't wash off the marks and the smell on my body. My life is like this already. I'm hopeless. Finn. Just let me die. Okay? I can't go on living. He hugged me tightly in his arms. You're not dirty. Serena is the cleanest girl and is not dirty at all. Even though our clothes were all wet and dripping water. I could feel the warmth coming from his chest and his strong heartbeat. My nerves suddenly relaxed. And I finally dared to cry out loud. But such a bright and sunny young man committed suicide by jumping into the river after we finished our college entrance examination. It was right at the place where we first met. Later, I learned that although he was so gentle, he had always suffered from severe depression. When he first met me that day, besides me, he also wanted to die. But he pulled me out of the quagmire. While he himself couldn't get out, the hospital announced that the rescue was ineffective. And the last thing he did for the world was to donate all his organs. I tilted my head and looked at Blake. When did you know about Finn? With his current status, position, and connections, I have no doubt that he could find out about Finn. Moreover, I have never tried to hide the existence of Finn. So I'm not surprised that he could find out. I'm just a bit curious about when he knew about Finn. One night, I heard you murmur this name in your dream. His eyes were so red that they seemed to be bleeding. Serena, when you were with me in the first place, was it because of the heart beating in my chest, which is Finn's? I didn't say anything, which was a kind of acquiescence. His smile was bitter and ugly. So, Serena, have you ever truly loved me? You must have known about the things between me and Amanda for a long time. Why didn't you make a scene with me? Is it because you never had me in your heart? I stared at him blankly. So, you think I've never loved you? He raised his voice. Isn't that the case? I asked him back, what about you and Amanda? He turned his head away. It's true that she was my first love. But I was just playing around with her. Just to make you angry. I suddenly laughed. Blake, Max. Have you told so many lies that you even believe them yourself? What do you mean? On the day of the car accident, Although I wasn't driving the car I usually drive, it was still a car from the company. But you were so focused on whether Amanda was injured or not that you didn't even realize that the person who was injured was me. When I was taken to the hospital for emergency treatment, do you know what the last thing I saw before I lost consciousness was? I saw you lower your head and almost kiss her on the forehead. Blake let out a low sigh. Is this what you call playing around? With each word I said, his face turned paler. He made a weak excuse, but I held back at the last moment. I didn't kiss her. Should I give you an award for not kissing her? I spread my hands. Blake, petting so fell me I'm sorry. If you really just simply doubted my feelings for you, you could have found an opportunity to lay out all these things and talk to me about them in detail. But you chose to use another woman to provoke me. Maybe at first you really just wanted to take revenge on me. But later, can you say that you really didn't have any feelings for Amanda at all? He clenched his fists, but couldn't say a word. I paused and then said softly, that's it. Blake, let's get a divorce. His eyes were filled with rage. Impossible. You can't divorce me unless I die. I looked into his eyes and said word by word, if you don't agree to the divorce, I will sue for divorce. The materials that you and Amanda have provided me with in the hospital these past few days are already enough for me to use as evidence. He rushed out of the ward in an embarrassed manner without looking back. After he left, my straight back suddenly relaxed, and I started gasping for air. Avoiding the wound, I touched my lower abdomen. Fortunately, hadn't fulfilled way. The child left that day. Blake was right about one thing. I did approach him because of the heart in his chest that belonged to Finn. I tossed and turned and inquired around, and finally found out which hospital Finn had the organ donation surgery in. But the doctor had a rule that they couldn't disclose any information to me. I heard that children had the best chance, so I stayed in the children's department as a volunteer. Later, there was someone who felt sorry for me and revealed the information to me. And that's how I had my first encounter with Blake. He was sitting in a wheelchair, looking sickly. I said, can you let me hug you? Hearing the strong beating of that heart, I couldn't hold back my tears. I thought, it's so great. Finn has come back to life in another way. I always liked to let Blake hug me because I could hear the heartbeat. Just like what I heard by the riverside all those years ago. It was only when Finn, who used to be out of my reach, became my persistent nightmare, and I finally woke up from this pathological feeling. I finally went to see a doctor. The doctor said, you've already moved forward, but you've been hypnotizing yourself and pretending to still be stuck in the past. It wasn't because of Finn's heart. I had already fallen in love with Blake a long time ago, but I forced myself not to forget Finn. However, I think I should be able to let go now. A month ago, I had my birthday. I originally had two things I wanted to tell him. The first thing was that I wanted to tell him about my past feelings for Finn. Those feelings were already in the past, and now, the person I like is him. The second thing was that I was pregnant. But when I saw him taking Cody to accompany him and to watch a movie, and all three of them had smiles on their faces, looking just like a family of three, I suddenly lost all desire to share anything with him. Later, there was no need to talk about these two things anymore. He found out about Finn on his own. And that child left quietly in the car accident. Blake didn't come again. But Cody came to visit me every now and then. However, I didn't want to pay attention to him. I once truly loved this child with all my heart. But I'm not good at loving others. I could only try to love him in the way that Finn and Blake had once loved me. But I failed. I didn't educate him well. And I made him hate me so much. The police's investigation results came faster than Blake. Amanda had deliberately crashed into me. She wanted to cling to Blake, this powerful person. And she somehow found out that my car was sent for maintenance, and I would be driving the company's car. So she crashed into it. But after all, she was pregnant. Even if she had to be punished, she could only be dealt with after giving birth to the child. But her child was gone. Blake himself pushed her down the stairs. And the child didn't survive. She was already in a late stage of pregnancy. After this incident, not only did she lose the child, but she also became a vegetable. She would probably spend the rest of her life in a hospital bed. When I went to the detention center to see Blake, he was in a sorry state. With a beard, he looked at me and said, "Serena, we still have a child together, don't we?" I shook my head and said, "No. He left on the day of the car accident." He grabbed his hair with both hands and pulled it hard, saying, "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I really didn't know. At first, I really just wanted to use him and to make you angry. But later, I don't know why things turned out like this." I sighed and said, "Originally, on my birthday a month ago, I wanted to talk to you about Finn. But at that time, you and Cody were accompanying Amanda to eat cake and watch a movie." He was stunned. And then he let out a beast-like sobbing roar. I had told him that my past experiences made me not good at loving others. And I had never told him about the things that had happened to me. But we had made an agreement that once I could let go of everything, I would tell him all the things without reservation. He even said a code word with me for this. "I called you across the aisle that day and said I was going to learn how to swim. Do you remember what you said?" Blake obviously remembered and shook his head in pain, crying hoarsely and unable to speak. "Because of those past things. I've always had PTSD and was afraid of water. So we set this code word. Do you remember what you said? You said you weren't afraid of water and told me not to bother." Blake, tell me. How could you be so impatient with me, but still smile so gently at Amanda? "Let's set each other free." Blake finally agreed to divorce me. Cody's mother spent a lot of money to pull strings and find connections, and finally managed to get him a lighter sentence for a few years. But he didn't fulfill his mother's wish. Taking advantage of the police's inattention, he hit the wall and died. Before he died, he said he wanted to donate his heart to someone in need. Without a son, she couldn't afford to lose her grandson either. I brought Cody to her. When I was about to leave, Cody broke free from the restraint, rushed towards me and hugged my leg, crying bitterly, "Mom, don't abandon me. I'll be good from now on. Please, don't abandon me." I pried his hands off little by little and didn't look back even once. I went back to the hospital again to thank Starry for always accompanying me when I was in the hospital. She took me to the door of a ward and pointed at the teenager sitting on the hospital bed and looking at the son inside, saying, "Finn's heart saved this child's life." I said, "That's great." Before I left, Starry asked me what I wanted to do in the future. I smiled brightly and said, "I don't know. I'll just take one step at a time. I can't learn to love others, but at least I can start by learning to love myself." She accompanied me to the hospital entrance, and with red eyes, she held my hand and said, "Take care, sister-in-law." I was stunned. She forced a smile and said, "I knew it the first time I saw you. If it weren't for you, my brother would have died long ago. Thank you for letting him accompany us for a few more years." I couldn't say, "You're welcome." After getting into the taxi, I just waved at her vigorously and said, "I'm leaving."